As a town, Aldburgh has a lot going for it. On one side it faces the sea, while behind it the estuary snakes through some lovely countryside. And the town itself has some architectural gems and more than a few oddities. It also has an impeccable seafaring heritage. Drake's Golden Hind was built here, although initially it was called the Pelican, a much humbler name. Now the town is a tourist spot much favoured by toffs, and nothing wrong with that at all. But for us sailing men, one of the best things about the place is the keelboat racing fleet. Loch Long 1 designs, 21-foot boats, elegant, aristocratic, fast, beautiful, and helmed by aggressive, polite, competent people. To watch them fighting for the best spots on the start line in a strong East Coast autumn blow is a complete delight. The only other fleet of Loch Longs in the UK is way up here on the Clyde, and each year up to a dozen boats are towed the 450 miles to Scotland to try to show the West Coast Celts who is boss. I've no idea when I'll get to film the Clyde fleet in action, but I will one day, I promise. I got these shots by cutting the engine on the Slug, standing in the cockpit and letting the fleet sail past as I drifted down with the strong tide. And having watched them race through the moorings, I had no worries at all that any of them were going to hit me. Great, great sailors. A real pleasure to watch them in action. During the winter series at Aldburgh, they're joined by other keelboats, many of them bog standard AWBs. But the best of the rest is this. If is a wonderful example of an old British International 8-metre yacht, built in 1930. And you don't come across a more magnificent maritime indulgence than an old 8-metre. As you watch her powering through the water, she's constantly trying to overtake her own bow wave. The fleet races right through the moored boats and take full advantage of the insane, incomprehensible currents and back eddies around the 200-degree bend on the river by Slaughden Quay. Coming up to the top part of the Oar, you pass the biggest and most northerly of all the Martello towers, 1 million bricks to make its elegant quatrefoil shape. Then ahead of you is Aldburgh and Slaughden Quay, the yard that's to be our home base for the winter. For the travelling sailor, Google Earth is an amazing resource. It allows me to find the sort of boatyard that suits me and the Slug, and Slaughden Quay looked as perfect as a place could be. It was here that I intended to take the Slug out for the briefest of maintenance schedules.
Not a bad place to be, is it? Look at that. And when she came out, They tell me, I assumed that they'd washed her down, but they hadn't, because it was water was too cold to do that. And what she's done, she's got a few barnacles. You can see between the hulls. Yeah. She doesn't sail well, and they have settled on the prop. So they're there for keeps. They're gonna be worse and worse. But actually, you know, I thought it would be weedier than that, but they said they couldn't wash it off. So there's the barnacles there.
Jules. A quick scrape of the hull with a paddle, a splash of badly applied varnish, and a coat of the cheapest anti-foul money can buy. 3 weekends of work, top whack, and the yard is absolutely wonderful. Let me have people about me who love their boats almost as much as they love sailing them. Blokes who make sacrifices for their sport. Men who drive rubbish cars. People who don't demand customer service, sparklingly clean bogs and subservient marina staff. Places where the boats are more interesting than the careers of the men who own them. Where the knowledgeable staff spend their days keeping classics alive. And Brian Upson, who runs the yard on the quay, is as lovely as they come.
Yeah.
So when was the last time you pulled out horsehair?
Oh, just down there.
Did you?
Yeah.
Just down at the bottom end of the quay here?
Most of this boat has been bloody corked with horsehair. Stockholm tar.
Gently and politely, he took the pish out of me from the moment we met until the moment I left.
Mr. Upson, I'm going to ask you now, what sort of boat owner am I?
A piss poor one.
But do I sail my boat more than most people?
You do, that's true. You do.
So it was a bad day for the boat that it came into my life, do you reckon?
Oh, I don't know, no, probably not. Probably better off being used than it has been.
And let me ask you about my gear change.
That's hilarious. The poor old engineer said, what do I do with this, you reckon?
Gave me the sort of advice I like, such as to not bother painting the keels on the slug, because the mirror offshore is no collector's item and the galvanising will outlive me, so why bother? Bloody perfect.
If I could afford to pay somebody else to do this, I would certainly do it. And then I wouldn't look like a bodger at all, I'd look like an affluent man. But because I'm not an affluent man and I have to do this stuff myself, then I am a bodger, because I will do the minimum amount to get back on the water. Got about another 3 hours before I have to get into the traffic to get home. And I've got quite a list of jobs to do. There's a lot going on the boat at the moment. But at the moment I'm just waiting for the soldering iron to warm up. Here are my electrics. That is a horrible, horrible place. It's getting a bit grubby too. A couple of people have asked what I use for a dinghy. Well, generally I don't use a dinghy. I've only ever used this once, but it lives in the back of the locker, and I've just got it out to dry it before I put it away. Hopefully I won't need it again this coming season either. It's not a nice thing, is it? Wow, this tide really comes in, look at that. It's coming right into the boatyard.
Slaughton used to be a village in its own right, but it was claimed by the North Sea. Aldburgh, just a short walk up the road, is still alive and well, and like most of the towns and villages along the coast, has been inhabited back to Roman times, and probably well beyond. There's still a good beach-launched fishing fleet there, and you can buy fresh fish straight from the men who landed it. Further along the shingle shore is this. It's called the scallop. I'm told some people really like it. I don't actually object to it, but to me it's just a few shells from the beach arranged in a certain way and then scaled up out of all proportion. Little better than the giant cabbages or frankfurters favoured by armpit American towns seeking to put themselves on the map. I admire the workmanship that went into it, but to my mind, a not very nice thing is spoiled even more by the words cut into it.
I hear those voices that will not be drowned.
Inspirational thoughts for some people perhaps. For me, I can think of better things to do with some pretty high-grade stainless steel. Generally, I prefer the fisherman's clatter to the scallop, but I'm a soulless sailor. The town is still a lovely looking place, but like many holiday towns, it does have that slightly genteel, ossified look to it.
This is what I call one of those rather rude buildings. Basically the bloke built it because he had the power to build it, and it just doesn't fit in with anything else around it. Fortunately, it just overlooks a car park, so stuff you mate. Yeah.
Very small people.
Oh no.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
So it's a giveaway.
Yeah.
David here, with his terribly ugly but utterly delightful and much loved dog Jonesy, lives on a boat down at Slaughton Quay. He took me on a whistle stop to
Aldburgh. Lots of tiny little wrinkled miniature people type thing.
She is quite an ugly dog, isn't she?
Oh, she's so beautiful. She's the prettiest dog. She's the prettiest dog you could possibly imagine.
Okay. Is this your favourite street?
Yeah, no, it's not my favourite street.
It's not?
It is. This is a street in Aldburgh, and let me tell you, I don't actually know a lot about buildings, so you're not going to get much from me.
But you're just telling me what you like. Lots of them have yachts in the windows, don't they?
Because you've got wisdom coming here. You need to record this.
Okay.
This is house, and there's another house. It's a pretty ordinary street.
Yeah.
There's a whole bloody street of houses.
That's amazing, isn't it?
Well, it is amazing for one particular reason, that this street does reveal the weird mystical cult of Aldburgh.
Yeah.
The cult, I say, because they were turning people into miniature human beings. And why they did it, we don't know. We think maybe overcrowding.
They're called children, aren't they? Miniature human beings.
There was a whole genetic thing going on in the 1700s to reduce their size. Consequently, they built tiny little houses. And we're going to find one or two tiny little houses around here, and you'll see what I mean. Only room enough for tiny people. And if you think about it, it's in the name, isn't it? Aldburgh, which is an anagram
of.
If you add 8 letters, take away 6.
Yeah.
Very small people.
Oh no.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
So it's a giveaway.
Yeah.
Let's have a look at some tiny houses. They're just too small. I mean, they're weirdly small. Why do they make them that small? There can only be one reason.
Yeah, look at that.
Look at that. That needs another 6 feet.
Look, that blue one's pretty thin too.
Oh.
They were not only small people, they were thin people.
Small and thin.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's also a town with no women. The men do all the child rearing.
Look at this tiny house. Well, it's not that tiny actually. That's rather beautiful, isn't it? It's like a little cottage. The thing about this street is you do tend to get houses that don't look like they should be by the seaside. They look like they should be in a little village. Inland.
Look, this here, cat scaffolding.
Right.
That's a tiny house. And
that.
here,
Yes,
hidden here,
people.
Jackdaw Cottage.
And that's lovely.
It is lovely, isn't it?
But that was probably meant for 300 or 400 of these small people to live in.
You mean they were no bigger than Lego people?
They were small.
Were they?
It's genetics, man. You don't understand genetics?
Half Crown Cottage.
Anyway, the most famous miniature house in Aldburgh, we're coming up to up here, which will give you even more proof. There's a miniature house on the left.
That is a miniature house on the left. Look, number 71.
Yeah.
Is just Lilliputian.
Lilliputian.
Yeah. Is that the way you pronounce it, do you think?
No idea.
So, in a village of tiny houses, in a town of tiny houses, there is one acknowledged supreme tiny house, is there?
We're coming up to it up here. It's extremely sold. It was sold actually quite recently for an enormous amount of money, but you'll see why it was sold for such a large amount in a minute. Got these little tweed cottages all interwoven with.
See, look at how tiny this front yard is.
Wow, that's silly because they're garages. There on the left, the garages.
Oh,
that one
here, it's a tiny house.
That's miniature.
Yeah.
Probably at the early stage of the genetic inbreeding process, because that's not as small as they do get.
Are there many other towns in Britain? Because there's lots of Americans look at this.
Are there many other towns in Britain?
Yeah, that have been afflicted by this miniaturising disease.
No, exactly. This was
just
the only
here.
one. It only happened here. And well, I can't help thinking in the proximity to the nuclear power station.
This is a weird building. I wonder what this was.
Continue. Nice.
The thing is about this town is though, in the winter time there are almost no lights on in these houses, are there?
Well, they're empty, yes.
Yeah.
Why? Because people don't actually live here that much. A lot of them they're like empty tooth in a mouth. You know, they're gaps. It's a shame, really.
They're owned by rich people.
If it was full, it would be just that little bit busier in the winter time. But believe me, this place is empty in the winter. There isn't a single person or a car in the high street. None. I mean, look at it. It's packed already. And what are we? April.
Let's do this house first, and then we'll do this one.
Here. Yes. Here we go.
Look at that. That's a beautiful thing.
That's miniature house.
Yeah. Okay, and here is the acknowledged master of the miniature house.
Yes, let me introduce you to this magnificent house. To walk around it would probably take about 10 seconds. So if you've got that much film in your camera, we can probably do it.
It basically takes up one parking space, doesn't it?
Yeah, with a short car. Well, it's got cars all around it.
Yeah.
There we go. They must get so fed up with people looking at it, but hey, it's not only tiny, but it's in there on its own.
It's also perfectly formed, though, isn't it?
I don't think so.
Don't you not think so?
Ugly. Ugly. Oh, Jonesy Bones, you love ballies, don't you? Thanks. Do you want to stand in front of it so we can see how small it is?
You can stand in front of it.
Shall I?
Yeah.
I guess the car, but that's a small car, isn't it?
Given that at some stage every winter the slug has to be ashore for a while, well, it'd be hard to choose a better place to be. What with people like David and Brian to entertain me, and to spend a few days living on the end of a quay where occasionally the Suffolk Light does some amazing things. It's a real privilege being a sailor sometimes.